everybody should be unbanked. If we want to reach the next billion people, we need to focus on the emerging markets. Developed nations are more difficult to change. They're still blaming it on the war. In reality, it's just the structure of your money. Everybody's going to come to the same realization. It is through education that we drive adoption. People are so scared. What if the government goes against it? Let them try. Bitcoin is the ultimate stablecoin.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Next Billion podcast, where we talk to the entrepreneurs, the builders, the people that are onboarding the next billion people into crypto. We're sitting here in IRL land today with Ben Caselin from MaskEx. And Ben and I have known each other for many years now. But Ben, what's up? Good to have you on the podcast.
All right, nice to see you again. Again in a different setting. And I feel like we keep meeting each other every now and then, kind of updating on the space. I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always something interesting going on whenever we have a chat. But I guess maybe we can start off with, what's your crypto journey been like? You know, we've had a lot of crazy stuff over the last few years, certainly in the last 12 months, FTX blowing up and all these other centralized, decentralized things, DeFi, NFTs. I think you've seen a lot of that over this time, but how did you get into this crazy clown world of crypto?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Actually, my way into crypto was a journey that I had been on together with my brother, actually.
Shout out to Joe.
Shout out to Joe. And but also with you, actually, you know, many years ago. And it's actually a very rational approach to crypto, because what we did without holding anything, we were just exploring like blockchain technology, and we were writing about it, writing about Bitcoin. I remember back then we were writing against Tether.
Yep.
I know nowadays we're like, all right, Tether is king. They win.
King's coin, as I
say.
They
won, right? but there was a time, because you know, in those days, I guess you were innovating on crypto collateralized stablecoins, and the argument that we were making was like, look, we don't know what Tether is doing, but look, crypto collateralized stablecoins is the future.
Which I still think is an amazing thing, and
it is.
Everything has its place, whether it's centralized stablecoins or crypto collateralized stablecoins.
Yeah.
But I think, there's probably been a lot of updates here and there of different models that have maybe come and gone with the stablecoin world, but I still love the stablecoin world.
I love the stablecoin world as well.
Yeah.
But I think through writing about it, and in my case, so very interestingly, first writing about DeFi before it was called DeFi, and then kind of ending up on the Bitcoin protocol and seeing the elegance of it really kind of got me into it. So it's very interesting. I was writing about
elegance.
Yeah, the elegance of the Bitcoin network. So writing about it before actually owning it actually was a way to educate myself as I was educating others. So that's kind of been my journey into crypto. And it's interesting that, you know, from that kind of hardcore decentralization perspective, I ended up in the centralized exchange world.
Yeah.
So for me, that's been the journey into it.
Amazing. Well, tell us about that, right? So essentially, when we first met, you and your brother were doing a lot of marketing stuff for my first startup back in the day, writing about crypto and that sort of thing. And as you say, like, you sort of educated yourself along the way, right? And maybe you radicalized yourself, like talking about crypto. So. But so then you sort of find yourself, you know, talking about crypto, and it's kind of like part of your life now, and then sort of went into a centralized exchange you mentioned. So tell us about, you know, how that sort of went.
All right, so even with the centralized exchange, maybe some of the people out there still know AX. I came in from a content perspective and really took all of the experience that we'd built, not just with your company, but also with some other companies that were more focused on cybersecurity, cold storage solutions, like all of this stuff, and just bring it together. And so for AX back then, I was setting up a content hub. And because it's not just content marketing, it is through education that we drive adoption, I guess. And again, in that process, I carved out a voice for myself and became quite bullish on Bitcoin and some of the other projects.
I want to ask you about that as well, about Bitcoin.
And sure.
Sure. Keep going.
We'll get there. But I guess, so on the one hand, it's been self-educational, and on the other hand, within the exchange, you know, as you go through the years, you build your influence and you build your impact. And so the centralized exchange, even though, you know, on some level it may conflict a little bit with some of the ideas that I have about where we need to go, I do believe at this stage in the development of this new financial infrastructure, centralized exchanges, they do offer a stage, a platform to reach a lot of people.
Why is that different to something else like a DeFi wallet or something like that?
Well, I mean, look, a DeFi wallet in itself is just a wallet. It doesn't talk. But let's say if you're a team, you're marketing around it, sure, you can use Twitter. There's a lot of avenues for growth at the moment, and I think there's a place for that. So that's really great. But still, centralized exchanges, they come with quite a lot of liquidity. There is a platform to talk with regulators. You know, let's say on the step finance side, maybe it's more difficult to have a conversation with a regulator than when you're a centralized exchange with registered entities. And there's just some advantages to being in this world, which is still a fiat world, as I always call it.
Do you think it's the ease of use? Because a lot of people will say, okay, people understand signing up with an email address and a password, right, for stuff. Whereas if you tell them, oh, by the way, you have 12 words which you need to memorize and back up, and by the way, if you lose your 12 words, you're screwed and you lose all of your funds, which is kind of like the DeFi and NFT world, right? Versus I sign up with an email address and I at least know that if I forget my password to log into a centralized exchange, I can always press forgot password, right? So do you think there's like a barrier to that ease of use, and that maybe that's why a lot of people, maybe their first introduction to crypto is through a centralized exchange?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's because we're from a, you especially you would speak from a different vantage point. You have some insights into like coding and like you're quite familiar in kind of an internet environment. If I look at my mom, there's just no way. She's, I custody her Bitcoin in a cold wallet, and it's like, and for my aunt and like for my uncle, and that's the reality of life. And so let's say you go into, I don't know, name a random country, Uzbekistan, it doesn't matter where you go. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of, let's say the masses that are not ready to deal with the 12-word structure and the seed phrase and the self. I mean, maybe you're not safe at home. I don't know what your situation is. That doesn't mean that, some people in, let's say, Kazakhstan, they become Bitcoin miners, so they obviously know what they're doing. But when you talk about the masses,
by the way, I think Kazakhstan's the best place to do Bitcoin mining. I said that
Must be.
I said that like 5 years ago. It's like, it's a cold environment, low cost of electricity.
Actually, you went there.
I went there and I told the central bank that. It was a conference thing. I went there, they took me to Almaty, and then I was in front of everyone saying, you need to do Bitcoin mining. And then I think they didn't do it for a while. And then a couple of years later, then they were like, oh yeah, we love Bitcoin mining. But it's like, bro, like everyone from China who left China for Bitcoin mining, just drive across the border to Kazakhstan and set up. So yeah, I think it's a great place. That's a side note.
No, that's cool. It's cool. The thing is, like, I think nothing needs to be ruled out at this stage. Even you want to do it through your bank. There's some people that don't even want to hold the crypto. They just want to track it. I think everything is okay at the moment, just because it takes time for, 7, 8, 9 billion people to get accustomed with this kind of new logic and new infrastructure.
Well, I guess that goes into why is that important? I'd like to hear that from you, because certainly I've spoken a little bit about why I think onboarding the next billion people into crypto is important, but what is it for you that is important about that topic in general? Like, why should we do that? Why is it important for people to understand crypto and wherever they might be in the world?
So I have different answers, right? So, okay, let's start with the stuff that most people could relate to, which is, like I mentioned, when I was with AX, Centralized Exchange, I had the privilege and the opportunity to travel quite a lot and to go to different places and engage large audiences. And the main narrative that I brought was that if we want to reach the next billion people, we need to focus on the emerging markets. So the emerging markets make up the majority of the global population, 85%. It's only 15% in the developed nations. Developed nations are generally more difficult to change. Hence, what's happening in the US, makes sense. It's the empire, right? It's vested interest. But in a place, where maybe there's more room for growth, there's also much more room for innovation and experimentation. El Salvador being a case in point. Like they've just sprinted ahead of all the rest. I love Bukele, whatever people say. So, just for that, I love it. So, for me, it's like talking about the emerging markets, talking about, for example, right, we always say like, Bitcoin and all DeFi can help the unbanked. Actually, everybody should be unbanked.
Yes, 100%.
Like the banks.
Yes, exactly. So this used to be a thing that we used to write about back in the day, was the concept of the unbanked. But now I'm like, no, you should be unbanked.
Yeah, like
absolutely.
Banks, like, I'm trying to pay my taxes in Hong Kong. This is a side story. And it's like, I'm trying to pay and the bank doesn't allow me to fucking transfer the money. And it's like, why? And I'm trying to call the bank and they don't pick up because
Hong
it's
Kong
after
banks
hours.
are so bad, man.
I get so angry. And then I finally get in touch with the customer service. I get no information. I've wasted money and now I need to pay the phone bill.
Yep.
It's just inefficient.
I did a wire transfer once in Hong Kong and literally they just lost the money and it never bounced back, just disappeared. It's just stuff like this, right? It's like, I think just the ability to trace a payment is super important.
Yes.
And that seems like a really basic use case,
Yes.
but it's like, at least in crypto, when I pay you crypto, it's there on the blockchain. We can see it. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to do anything. It's there. Whereas if I send a wire transfer, it's
hope for the best.
Who knows? Yeah.
Hope for the best.
Yeah.
And like crazy shit happens. Like, you know, sometimes your bank account gets closed or at least like suspended for a while. I've had that and I didn't know why. And it's like, yeah, because you received this amount and you sent it out. And I was like,
Tell me about it. Yep.
That's exactly what I needed to do. That's why I have your service, right?
Yeah.
Like, what else are you for?
Yeah.
But okay, you know, this is the kind of frustration that we build up with the banking system. So what are we talking about? The unbanked. Good for you. Now let's put you on a different system immediately. You can upgrade immediately. And for anybody else who's in the kind of still stuck in the banking ecosystem, sooner or later, everybody's going to come to the same realization. And if SVB didn't show you and Signature Bank didn't show you and Credit Suisse didn't show you, then maybe a bank near you, right, will come and show you. And I think everybody will come to the same realization that you either want to hold self-custody or at least get out of that old legacy ecosystem. But maybe we can talk about that later. It's quite a big topic.
Look, I think this whole concept of banks not being this trustworthy entity, which is kind of what they build their rep on. I remember going to Tajikistan and the people there were saying 2 banks collapsed and everyone lost their money. And that was like 3 years before I went or something. So it's like, oh, okay, this narrative out there about banks being the safe place that you store your money. It's like, man, not really. I think a lot of people in the world, as you say, the 85%, perhaps are more in tune with this reality because, I mean, who's hearing about Tajik banks blowing up? It's not mainline news anywhere, right? So, yeah, I think the emergence and reality of crypto being this one layer that works everywhere, it totally makes sense. And it's something that, especially like I said, with a payment, I don't need to trust anyone. It's either there or it's not. So,
but maybe this is the thing. In the emerging markets, you know, the next billion, and actually the next 7 billion, it's like they're more aware of the failure of the banking system. They're also more aware of the failure of fiat. They're probably all dealing with a shitty currency that's constantly just, you know, losing value. And I guess the US is just waking up to this. Because let's say from a US perspective, it's like, oh, we dominate. Actually, I don't know how you know, if I can cuss, but like you're getting fucked constantly. And it's like maybe people haven't seen it yet, or like they're still blaming it on the war or whatever bullshit stories they have. But in reality, it's just the structure of your money that is by definition messing up your life. And I think people in the emerging markets are more aware of this, and that's why gold is popular, and I guess Bitcoin is popular and other cryptocurrencies. So that's one aspect, by the way, of why I'm doing this, because I do actually care about people, and I think that, you know, there's a lot that the crypto space and this infrastructure has to offer people. And just because I don't like illogical arguments, I don't like injustice, all of this stuff. Having said that, crypto exchanges are not necessarily much safer at the moment. You know, yes, FTX collapsed, AX collapsed, a lot of exchanges collapsed, some lending platforms collapsed, and the banks collapsed. So if anything, it's a story about self-custody, and you know, that is why, in essence, I am always very, very bullish on Bitcoin, the protocol, and the elegance of Bitcoin. But not to rule out anything around it. It's just, that's where I kind of anchor my principles, and I always have.
Well, I think maybe that's the role of centralized exchanges, is that it's a place that you can exchange the fiat for crypto and then get it out and self-custody yourself. And that's great, right? That's a really good use case. So it's kind of like centralized exchanges are this necessary intermediary between the crypto world, which is, you know, you own your own money and all that sort of stuff, and the fiat world, which is collapsing and horrible and all this kind of stuff, right? So you're always going to need that middleman, I think. And I've always said that I think the centralized exchanges are more just sort of rails for people to get on and off ramps, people to get in and out of the crypto world. And I think that probably makes sense. But
that's how I treat it. Like if I want to buy something, I buy it, and then I withdraw. And if you want to hold something because you want to make use of like a virtual card to pay for stuff, or maybe you want to be in a futures position, hedge against. That's fine. I think it's all fine, but not with your life savings.
Yeah.
You shouldn't anyway put your life savings into a futures position.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have something that you're going to hold, then best hold that in self-custody, I would say.
Yeah.
And it feels good. Self-custody feels good because when things around you fall apart and you realize, hey, this is fine.
Yeah.
Actually, nobody can mess you up.
Yep.
And that's a good feeling. And I think everybody should come to that realization. Back then, many years ago when we wrote, we always said 20% on the exchange, 80% in your cold wallet. Right? Maybe the ratio should be different as you kind of expand, but I still think so.
It makes sense. So you mentioned as well about Bitcoin and how you see that different to other coins. Mm-hmm. What's your take on, we live in a multi-chain world already. There's thousands of them out there.
Yes.
Should people just be looking at the one coin or different coins, or I don't know, what's your take?
It's a very complicated thing. Okay, so from early childhood, I grew up in a household that is quite spiritual actually.
Okay.
And there's a perspective on, we're moving towards a borderless world, a unified world. And that doesn't mean we're all the same, just a borderless world where at least, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
And so, you overcome racial differences and whatever divides us is not necessary. But money is part of that.
Yeah.
It's actually not a very just world where some people have access to good money and others have access to bad money.
Yeah.
So actually, very interestingly, I grew up with the idea that there will be a global currency.
Yeah.
And of course, you have no idea as you're 11, you're 12 years old, you have some ideas, you think, US dollar maybe. Actually, I think Bitcoin is a very great monetary network to serve a global population as a base reserve currency and network.
Yeah.
And just like gold was for cavemen, or for the ancient populations, actually gold throughout all religions, gold always features as something important.
Absolutely, and there's many reasons for that.
Many reasons.
As the 7 properties of money.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's say, this is my view on Bitcoin, that I think because it's so non-sovereign, because nobody owns it, because there's no CEO, because of its kind of
There's not
beautiful...
some dead guys printed on it that you get out of your wallet. And,
I think it's the most and only suitable one to have to serve a global population.
Yeah.
But having said that, we've also entered a digital age.
Yeah.
And we have no idea yet where digitalization is going to take us. It doesn't need to be one coin, but I look at Step Finance, I look at Ethereum, I look at these coins kind of more like equity. You get a stake in this network you think is interesting, or you want to make use of it, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I always return to a kind of base currency, which is Bitcoin. And so I love stable coins.
Yeah.
I think maybe for the next 20 years, stable coins are very important, whether it's gold backed or fiat backed. But in my mind, 50 years from now, 40 years from now, Bitcoin is the ultimate stable coin.
Amazing.
Right? Because eventually it will stabilize, whether it's at $1 million US, whatever the future is for the US dollar, but it'll stabilize somewhere, probably around the price of one Bitcoin. And, if the distribution is enough, you can have an El Zonte economy globally. And just internally, I pay you in Bitcoin, you pay me. Of course, we can issue other things on the Lightning Network or whatever else is coming, and multi-chain, and we can even work on other chains. But the denomination in my mind should be Bitcoin.
Yeah, look, I sympathize with that. I think what it comes down to, I agree that Bitcoin is a great sort of store of value. It would be great if it was more of a payment method and you could build more stuff on it, but it's kind of, Satoshi built it to be simple and it stays simple. So kind of get that whole thing. I do think though that if you're just some random dude with a computer somewhere in the world and you can make a private currency of which people can voluntarily choose to use or not, which by the way, fiats are not voluntarily, they're issued out of compulsion. If you don't use it, you go to jail.
Yeah, it's tyrannical.
Tyrannical, right? So it's I like the concept of anyone being able to spin up their own thing.
Yep.
Hey, maybe it's a load of nonsense, but actually the ability and the freedom for someone to spin up their own thing, I think is great. Yeah. And if people want to use all of these different coins and different kind of stuff, go for it. It's a free market, essentially, as far as I would say. So yeah, look, I do agree that, Bitcoin holds a special position, I think, in the crypto world. And yeah, all of these other things, be it for good or worse, great. They're out there, people can voluntarily use them, and that's okay.
No, but I agree with you. I think because there is that level of principle where it's like Elon. You saw the interview and it's he was asked, do you want to ban TikTok? And he's like, I don't really want to ban anything. And I think that's the right approach because what is this tendency that we have to try and control everything around us? It's not necessary.
Yeah.
So me personally, I love Bitcoin.
Yep.
But nonetheless, I can admire someone like Vitalik and what he built.
Yep.
And I think is really great, and it has some benefits. And I think over time, people will definitely develop a radar, a sense of that's a scam, that's legit, that's interesting. You're not going to keep losing your money.
Yeah.
You put your money a few times into a centralized exchange, and you notice like, wait a minute, I should not put everything into one platform. And then you're going to change your behavior. And over time, over the decades, people are going to change their behavior. So,
yeah. And I guess as well, so tell us maybe a little bit about sort of MaskEx and your regional approach to things. You know, it's Dubai based or UAE, right? Tell us about that. Like, why is that region important in the world? I know a lot of crypto stuff is happening these days in Dubai.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
Yeah, every time on Twitter I'm checking and there's all sorts of different things happening. Actually, 10 years ago, it wasn't a case. I think I made this tweet a while back where crypto stuff in general, or maybe international business in general, like it was kind of it wasn't as developed as it is now in Dubai. Like there's actually legitimately, it is an international city that's doing a lot of amazing stuff. So it's important in the region, right? So yeah, tell us a little bit about what your perspective is there.
Okay, so following AX, I was not really planning on joining any centralized exchange again. And, you know, I was just like, nah, I'll just go into like some Trezor type of, you know, thing, or like, you know, work with cold wallets. But I still got convinced. And the reason I got convinced is because, in this case, MaskEx, all right, so 50% shareholders is the royal family, sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi, which tells me like, wait a minute, this is an exchange where there's some support behind it. I'm not like anti everything, right? I'm not anti anybody with power. Like, I think, okay, so they have some power there in the UAE and they want to make it work for the region and they're behind this exchange, then wait a minute. Because then if Coinbase, like, you know, US, Coinbase, China, Hong Kong, Binance, and if you don't know it, now you know it. You know, it's just, you saw the boat. They have a boat now in Hong Kong. They
have a boat?
Well, they don't have a boat. They had a party on a boat.
Okay.
And it had logos of Binance.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just like with Tron, Justin, and they're all together celebrating. Yeah. It's all fine, whatever, celebrate. But understand, it's on the Chinese side.
Yeah.
That's a choice if you do it. I love Hong Kong. I've lived there for many years. I still kind of do. But we have to be very transparent and very honest about it. That's one region. The US is another region.
And there's a middle ground.
And there's a middle ground. Yeah. And I believe the UAE and the surrounding region, you know, whether it's kind of North Africa, Middle East, Turkey, Uzbekistan, that's another region. And I think MaskEx can be the face of that whole region because it's carried by the royal family.
Yeah.
So that opportunity, I think, is pretty significant and also important, because what we don't want is all liquidity to be amassed on Coinbase and Binance, which is currently pretty much the case.
Yeah.
All the exchanges are hedging. If you don't want to see another FTX contagion fiasco, then how about we change our ways? Because right now, one big problem on Binance, all your exchanges are fucked, basically. All of them, maybe not Coinbase. But Coinbase already fucked them.
It would be bad.
So, right? So it's like, all right, so let's not build one big liquidity pool where we all share. Let's build something in the UAE. And we can say, well, maybe we can have another liquidity pool. Maybe another stable coin project that issues from that region where it's carried by different banking system.
Yes.
If for now we unfortunately still need to work with the bank.
I've been saying this for a long time. Like the dirham is pegged to the US dollar. You could essentially issue a synthetic USD from UAE without all of the nonsense of USD.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have it in the US with USDC.
Yeah.
Okay, for now it's still kind of USDT dominating in Asia, but I think Hong Kong wants to bring stablecoins under its purview. So
I'm bearish on Hong Kong doing anything.
Sure, but because you left already. But no,
I spoke to them. I was literally the one that introduced them to all of this stuff.
Yeah, but you know
the way that they think.
But they have a choice. They either go the CBDC tyrannical way, or they're going to support some stablecoins. Most likely True USD.
Yeah.
Because it's Hong Kong, and it seems Binance getting rid of BUSD. Seems to be jumping on the True USD. But we have to know it for what it is and see it for what it is. So maybe in the UAE, we will, you know, I can't make predictions on it. This is not an authoritative statement, but I can imagine what I hope for the region is that we can see some issuance of a stablecoin there.
Yeah.
It would attract a lot of foreign investment. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
And people do trust that banking system. By the way, it's a gray area. I think the UAE is not on like some blacklist, on the whitelist, like a kind of gray middle ground area.
Yep.
But you know, gray is always best because that's where most things happen.
Yeah.
So I'm quite bullish on the region. I think it's important to strengthen the region. I think MaskEx has a role to play, not just in the UAE, but in the surrounding countries. You know, I have to get used to it as well because I've been in Hong Kong and China for like 8 years. So I have to try and change my perspective and say, all right, from the UAE, how do we look at the world? We do want to strengthen our relationships with these other countries in the CIS region and not get caught up in all this sanction language and all of this very kind of controlling, tyrannical, geopolitical, you know, discourse. It's just like, no, we want to start from a freedom perspective.
Yeah, and I think what everyone can see with Dubai emerging as a global business hub, like that's definitely the case. Is it 26 free zones or something like that, free trade zones in the country, and they all have their own laws basically within there, which is super amazing and awesome.
Yeah.
And also, as you say, it's not on the US side, it's not on the China side of the world, it's in between. And it's that really cool sort of middle ground, which I think a lot of people appreciate, that it's not in the sphere of influence of either of the teams forming, I guess.
Yeah, because they're oil rich and they have friendships with the world that are just of a different nature than, let's say, US friendships or even Chinese friendships.
Yeah.
Like, it's a different way of positioning. And I think it's the way forward at the moment because there's a lot of things happening. You know, the US dollar is under attack. You know, the BRICS are coming up and I think they've overtaken the G7 or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that as well. Yeah.
But it's good. Yes, I do agree we're going to a multipolar world because just like multi-chain makes sense to have a little bit of diversity, a little bit of difference of perspective.
Multi-chain and multipolar together. I like that.
Right? I think so. Multi-chain, multipolar. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really excited to be part of this.
Yeah.
And actually, we're not in a free zone. So not this office, but we are actually constructing the headquarters. It's going to be the first crypto exchange that actually publicly discloses their headquarters and is open to the public, similar to a bank.
Yeah.
There will actually be a studio inside where people can come and they can use ATMs, crypto ATMs, for any crypto that MaskEx lists, not just Bitcoin.
Amazing.
Yes, and it's really unique because in Dubai it's not so easy to import these ATMs.
Yeah.
And so it's very different from my experience with AX.
Yeah.
Because with AX, it was a bunch of entrepreneurs that had started an exchange. But in the end, the bigger you grow, the bigger the attack vectors, right? So you become big and there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's like we're expanding within a fortress.
Yeah.
And the fortress is already there. So it's quite...
That's a cool way to... And that is a unique thing in the world. Like literally having a place that's public and transparent and it's like, this is...
I think so.
This is where things are, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Whereas a lot of these crypto exchanges are not like that.
But that's old generation, and they couldn't have been.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, everything will evolve. And so, of course, eventually, if crypto exchanges want to come into the... Look, FTX was the most licensed exchange in the world.
Yep.
And they
I tell people this,
So, look, of course, we're also applying for the licenses. We have the MSB in Canada. Of course, we're talking to the regulator in Dubai. And of course, we're pursuing all the right licenses. But that's not a guarantee for success or legitimacy or integrity. It's not. And for those things, it's a project. You have to work on it. And I think disclosing your headquarters is part of it. I mean, Bank of China, you can't find the headquarters somewhere on an island somewhere. I don't know if you can find headquarters for like Starbucks. Like there's a bunch of, this, right? The entity world is very complicated.
Probably the Cayman Islands somewhere. Or
Probably some island, But do we really want that? Is that the world we want to live in? I know like we love to be digital nomads and have a little bit of anonymity in the world, but that's as individuals.
Yeah.
But companies that serve people, that are accountable to people, they should be visible and approachable.
Yeah.
So, and even though we're kind of, 90% digital, you're still real.
Yeah.
If something happens on some digital platform, there's still some accountability, right? It's not just some digital robot that's just imaginary.
Yeah, it's real humans that exist in the real
world. Real people that are
Yeah.
affected and responsible. And again, I keep referring to it, but I've seen the collapse of an exchange, and I've seen how difficult it is on the user side, but also on the staff side. Suddenly, we're no longer digital. Suddenly, we're actually in the real world, and it's like, all right, who's responsible?
Yeah.
And then there's things working against you. It's digitalization doesn't always work for you. It can work against you, whether it's old content or old, there's accountability in your digital footprints. But it's also about entity structures, very complicated. And we've built this really complicated world now where nobody wants to be accountable. So
it's like, oh, well, this human doesn't exist. They're actually an entity somewhere, which is an incorporated thing. And oh yeah, by the way, it's on some Caribbean island. So
and that's not just crypto exchanges. It's all types of companies. So let's say in a 20-year time frame, we can see Bitcoin grow. We can see the wider crypto ecosystem evolve. And that can also mean that like 20% or 30% or 50% disappears. Doesn't matter. It's fine. The best of the best stays. Maybe we'll see some big changes on the stablecoin front. Maybe first some great stablecoins, and then maybe some. It depends on the future of the US dollar. And maybe we'll go to gold-backed stablecoins, and maybe that'll be the pair with Bitcoin. Who knows? But as well on the company front, on the kind of corporate front, we need to build a better world. Right.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, it all comes back to self-custody being the best way for anyone out there as an individual user to engage with any of these different companies all around the world is like, great. Use them as an on and off ramp, but still at the end of the day, self-custody your coins ultimately. So, so I think we're all on that page. So we mentioned a little bit about the future. We're 2023, we're in April now. What do you see for the rest of this year? What's sort of your focus, I guess? Or maybe just in general in the crypto markets?
Now, if you or if anybody thought 2022 was crazy, I think it was nothing compared to 2023 and of what's to come, but that's not necessarily a good thing. So I don't just look at like, the bull market or bear market, like whatever. Yes, we're in a good position. Definitely, if you have woken up to the reality of the banking world, for sure, get some Bitcoin, like that's life advice, not financial advice. And like,
I like that.
Yeah, all of that is fine. For sure, the Fed will probably like change its policy again and cut rates and like whatever. It all makes sense, all very predictable. And then we'll see another bull market. But that's not the important thing, because those are just the fluctuating prices in the confused world as it approaches this new asset class, right? Technology. I think we're under attack, and it starts in the US, and maybe it'll stay in the US.
You mean crypto?
Yeah. I think the industry has woken the wolves. And the Elizabeth Warrens of the world that are so completely either ignorant or malicious in their...
Both.
Both ignorant and malicious. They're ignorant, they're maliciously ignorant.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to say it. And then the media, and it's like, this just losing credibility. What we saw in what was the New York Times about that mining article. And it's just like, who even reads that anymore? Like, maybe someone like my mom would read it and then, like whatever, it's okay.
It's the sort of last throes of a dying empire.
That's it. That's how I see it. But this is going to be the most fascinating few years, not just 2023.
I'm excited because this is what I've been saying for over a decade now. And all of this is now finally come. And a lot of Bitcoin people have been saying this as well.
Of course. But also the legal tender play in El Salvador. Like a lot of people are expecting it. Just not from that corner of the world, right?
But that does make sense that El Salvador, a country which did not have control over its own national currency anyway. They used the US dollar. It was a dollarized economy. And there's lots of countries around the world that are like that. They're using someone else's currency. So they're kind of like outsourcing all of their
policies,
inflation elsewhere, trade, that sort of thing. Usually, if everyone wants to buy your stuff, the general concept in economics is, well, that means more people are buying your currency, so it's worth more, right? And so a lot of countries, they don't have the ability to adjust to their trade deficits or anything like that if they're using someone else's coin, essentially. So for them, I think it does make sense to use some sort of neutral thing like Bitcoin as their currency, because why not? They got nothing to lose. Like if the current coin that they're using is going to hell, then you might as well just go and use something else. So I think a lot of the different countries around the world that are using other currencies as proxies, probably in the next few years might be seeing a change to something crypto. A lot of them, a consultant in a suit and works for some big four accounting firm will probably tell you it's CBDCs because they want to sell $1 million contracts to them, which, look, they're going to exist, but they're not going to be interesting at all. They're not going to be the new Tether, and it's going to be a closed thing for banks, essentially, to use.
For banks first.
It's never going to be anything other than that. I don't know where people think that it's going to be the same as USDC, because they literally don't know how anything works if they think that. Because it's going to be an internal banking system, like what Ripple sell banks, right? And that's it. And you go, hey, we're using a CBDC. Cool, bro.
Who cares?
Who cares?
It's like JP Morgan with their JP coin, or whatever that is.
Did that change the ability for anyone to send a wire transfer and do it?
It doesn't interest me.
So I think like ultimately, we're going to reach that point where some countries will be like, yeah, you know what? On the balance of things, I might actually go and try this new thing over here, this crypto thing, and
I think
I've got nothing to lose.
I mean, I don't know if I can say it, but my hope, my intention, I would find it very great if I can find a way to invite Bukele to UAE.
Let's go.
And organize not just like a setting with people, but bring them together with, for example, some key members of, this is all very sensitive stuff, but this is what I would hope.
Yes.
I would really want to bring him into that region and be like, hey, look, tell your story.
Yeah.
Because I like him a lot.
Yeah.
I think we should all be minded like him, like just anti-empire, stand up and just like, this is not how the world needs to be. This is a pretty crazy world. And Biden is old. I saw some footage where he greets the wrong, like some random dude who's, you saw that, right? Like he didn't know the British Prime Minister or something. He just pushed him away and greeted somebody else. It's just becoming a joke. The whole of the political theater, and it's not just the US, I don't want to mock it too much, but it's like everywhere. It's just a theater. They have no idea what they're talking about. And actually they should know by now. Even in the Senate 3 years ago, people said, hey, we can't stop Bitcoin. They're aware. But then new idiots come into power.
Well, I mean, we've seen China try to stop Bitcoin 8, 9, 10 times, something like that, and it doesn't
fail.
work. So.
But at the same time, we also need to know that there's plenty of very big holders in China as well that benefit from Bitcoin's growth. So, we don't need to pretend like it doesn't. It does exist. It's an important currency in the country for the people that care about their wealth. And maybe not for the everyday citizen, because God forbid they have some freedom. But for sure, people that have power in China and in Hong Kong, for sure, they know that Web3, basically Bitcoin and then a whole bunch of things around it. Web3 is a big question. I like Web3. I like the word. It's a nice word. It sounds cool. If Web3 is really about ownership and about really kind of restructuring the internet experience, I know Hong Kong is very bullish. I actually heard the Chief Financial Secretary put it as one of the top priorities in Hong Kong for the coming time, along with AI, I think.
Believe it when I see it.
Well, that's it. So I want to see it because it all sounds very good, but do we actually know when we talk about Web3, we're talking about freedom, real freedom.
Yeah, and I don't think they know, to be honest.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think that they've heard some cool words from their advisors and they don't really realize that, hey bro, by the way, if everyone starts using Web3, they're not going to use your national currency. They're not going to KYC at your local banks. They're not going to be doing all this kind of stuff. You probably don't want to be promoting this. I don't think anyone's actually told them that.
Yeah, but I'm happy. I'm really happy for everybody.
Which is great. Hey, they can walk blindly into onboarding everyone into the crypto world, which is fantastic.
And be a fountain of joy.
Yeah.
It's because Web3 is not supposed to be some spider web that you're stuck and you can't escape it. And so, okay, let's see. If Web3 is going to be the real Web3, that's good. That's good for freedom, good for the world. It'll open up new opportunities for investment.
I love it.
It's definitely not pictures of monkeys. It's definitely not some nice profile pictures. I don't know if that'll exist in a few years. Maybe it will. I don't want to bring down the pudgy penguins and whatever it is. It's all good.
I love my pudgies.
Keep it, be happy about it. But that's not Web3. That's just a funny thing on the side. I think Web3 and Bitcoin and whatever DeFi protocols are coming out, that's all part of the same freedom story. And proof of work is important, and proof of stake is great if you have a cool chain that you want to play around with. That's it. It's pretty straightforward.
I think it's about a financial system, right? And what DeFi and Web3 is trying to create is a financial system, and what Bitcoin's trying to create is gold. And these are two different things, and they're two things which are not in combat with each other. They're actually completely fine to be separate things. We need a decentralized financial system just as much as we need a decentralized reserve asset for the world. So having a way for us to transact without any intermediaries with DeFi, or getting a loan in DeFi or anything like that, these are all useful, awesome things for the world. And they're not a store of value like Bitcoin, and that's okay.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that tomorrow, by the time you publish this podcast, it'll be in the past, but we have a Spaces.
Yes.
And it'll be very fascinating. What's it called again? The disintegration of crypto and TradFi.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, and I invited some awesome people. So like, you know, if people are listening to the podcast and still go to either George's Twitter or my Twitter, find it, because it's going to be, and so it has been, an interesting conversation. Both with George and then with Anadolu. You met him in Turkey.
Yes, good
He's
friend.
a very cool guy, and so also a long time in the space, and he'll have some fierce views. And some other guy that I know, Andy Chung, who is Hong Konger, but he's in Vietnam, who can provide more on the ground perspective. Because, you know, as we approach this exciting year in 2023 and 2024, that is my question. Like, are we integrating with this TradFi, or is this actually we've met each other and now we're in a divorce process and we have to argue around custody, you know, and that's like pun intended. And I think this will be the most fascinating time this coming few years, and we'll win. You know, it's like a battle, because
all decentralized movements always win, right?
They must,
like,
they must.
That's why the Viet Cong won. That's why the Taliban won. That's why Mao won. That's why 1776.
Yeah, but you should align us with something more peaceful. Like, I don't know if I want to be on that side of the history things,
but the point stands, right? Of like decentralized movements. Always are able to be more nimble than the big behemoth in the room, which often has hubris attached to it. It thinks that it's number one and will always be number one, and turns out that it isn't.
It's the story with the emperor with no clothes. It's that typical thing. And it's like, some people are so scared, like, oh my God, well, what if the government goes against it, they ban it? And it's like, let them try.
Yeah, they could. Fine.
Because when there's enough people, really, look, we're all eating corn, and maybe you're eating something on some of it, but we have some corn. We really want to go back to processed sausage. You know what I mean? This fake fiat food. We really want to go back to that. Well, no, nobody. Once you've awoken, this is a new generation. And so, you know, definitely, if ever I have children, I will raise them on a Bitcoin standard. And
there we go.
You know, there we go. And that's just how you're going to think.
I love it.
Hey, but apart from the spaces, I think maybe it is still on time, but keep an eye. I think I'll see you in Dubai.
Yes.
And I mean to say, I'll see you in the Museum of the Future.
Let's go.
Because we're going to have an awesome event there on the 7th of May.
Okay.
And this will be in collaboration with Finoverse. They used to be the organizer for the Hong Kong FinTech Week.
Yes, I remember them, yeah.
And there's a delegation coming from Hong Kong to Dubai to kind of learn with each other about where we're going to go and how can we, you know, bring this. This is so exciting. It's such an exciting time. And so we're co-hosting the event. It's where we put the flag in the ground and be like, look, MaskEx is there in Dubai. And
the new center of gravity for the crypto world.
I hope so. At least one of the centers, one of the decenters. And Anadolu will be there as well. So
awesome. Well, look, I'm looking forward to it. Maybe just to wrap things up, like, where can people find out more if they want to know about MaskEx? What should they do? Twitter, blogs, website?
I think in May we're going to be launching an academy, because I always come with a content perspective. So it's going to be a giant hub again, and I'm going to build out, you know, a lot of video content, MaskEx TV, all of this stuff. But that's not available yet. Personally, I just think download the app. Just go to Apple Store, Google, download the app. It's a pretty good app, actually. It's pretty fast. You have multi-address, so if I send you USDT, you can generate new addresses. You can also delete your addresses.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's all built around anonymity and freedom in that sense. And I think just download the app and then come to our Twitter, your Twitter, my Twitter, MaskEx Twitter is fine, and we learn together. Twitter is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, this has been a really enlightening discussion, as always, Ben. So thank you so much for your time. Definitely go and check out the links. We'll put them down below, wherever they are, to everywhere that we've been discussing today. But look, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be back soon. See ya.
Ciao.